Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Walking Dead. The Ones Who Live Season 1, Episode 1 Review. Years. The Ones Who Live was well worth the wait. How do we feel? This event has been years in the making for fans of The Walking Dead, who have patiently waited for a resolution to a mystery that hung over the original series until its conclusion. While we knew there would be a climax to Rick Grimes and Michonne's tales, nothing was known about what it entailed. Will there be concurrent narratives and an inevitable reunion? Or maybe they'd throw us for a loop and work backward, showing us a beautiful reunion followed by everything that led up to it. It was closer to the former, with the first hour entirely dedicated to filling in the years since the bridge collapsed and Rick was carried away against his will to start a new life in the Civic Republic. The Ones Who Live Season 1 Episode 1 was well worth the wait. It's a large and convoluted universe, but even if you haven't seen every episode or all the spin-offs, there's enough exposition throughout the hour to keep you interested and knowledgeable about what's going on. Rick Grimes is at the heart of this drama, and after watching over 100 episodes, I consider myself an expert on the subject. The hour began with Rick holding a piece of shattered glass to his neck, a horrific sight that will stay with you throughout the event. It was a powerful initial image that set the tone for the hour, which saw a frantic Rick experience a range of emotions as he sought to find out how to get back to his family. And that was really at the heart of this installment. We met Michonne after the bridge collapsed and gained insight into her emotions and determination to find her husband, but this was the first time we saw Rick, and there were years and years of information. In fact, the hour can feel like an information dump at times, but it's also entirely necessary given the season's 6 episodes. That's 6 hours to explain years and years spent in prison, and that's just Rick's story. During these hours, we also need to locate Michonne. The CRM has been a nemesis throughout the world, and Rick's experience immerses us completely within its Philadelphia walls as he tries to find a way out. This is the most Rick Grimes aspect of the premiere. When did he become so content to lay back and absorb whatever came his way? He even severed his hand to escape and return to the people he loved. It was brilliant to show that scenario first and skip over many of the other prior attempts. And it was clearly done for shock value as well as to emphasize Rick's desire to make his own decisions in a world where doing so was almost impossible. The CRM functions like an enormous prison, but its people see it as the last shining chance for society. You pay your dues, and then you're inducted into this thriving world, one they'll never see again, where people work hard to maintain their way of life. On the surface, that seems wonderful, doesn't it? Look at Esteban. He was overjoyed to have earned his position and entered the city walls, but Rick was never going to be that kind of person. Life is about making choices, both good and bad, and the CRM left you with none. Once you were in, you were in. And Rick had to learn this, even if it took a few years. Rick's story unfolded through voiceovers and flashbacks, which I believe will be highly controversial among viewers. On the one hand, the information was critical, and again, with limited time, you had to find a way to fit it all in. However, some people regard voiceovers as lazy, but they're supposed to clue the audience into the CRM and what's been occurring over the years, as well as help build Rick's longing for the love of his life, Michonne. Aside from Michonne, the most intriguing component was watching Rick's resolve wane over time as he learned more about Okafor, the CRM, and what his future held. Okafor was the most engaging of the characters introduced. It was difficult to determine if we were supposed to regard him as a nice or evil character. Or perhaps he was supposed to straddle the gray line that so many Walking Dead characters usually do. He was a forward-thinking individual whose ultimate goal was to improve the current CRM structure. And he saw Rick, and Thorne in particular, as people who could assist him in achieving his aim. Now, why he was so preoccupied with Rick and Thorne, two A's with their own opinions, which is always frowned upon by governments who don't want to be questioned, wasn't directly stated, other than the fact that he felt they were leaders. And Okafor was correct about Thorne. She may have fought back at first, but Rick chopping off his hand, and yet finding himself in that dreary flat seemed to calm her down. She was so committed to Okafor's plan that she refused to aid Rick even when he had a perfect opportunity to flee. Of course, Rick had no idea Okafor had a backup plan to keep him in line. The struggle between Rick and Okafor, interwoven with Okafor's terrifying story of a man used to betrayal, difficult decisions, and enormous remorse, was the most riveting scene of the hour. Okafor bombed Atlanta, Okafor bombed Los Angeles, and he killed his own wife to prevent a larger wave of death. He was committed to his path of reform within the RCM, and with tenacity rooted in a lifetime of misery, he would not allow Rick Grimes to walk away without a struggle. Rick would have tried to go again if Okafor hadn't used the Michon card. The Walking Dead was always a survival narrative, and Rick spent all those years just existing in the Civic Republic, waiting for his chance to go. He joined the CRM for that very reason.